Hello, welcome back to our series where you recommend the best book in a particular category to fellow readers. So in this series we have already covered adult fantasy, YA fantasy, winter setting reads or winter reads, horror books, and thrillers. I believe that's where we're at. And now we are adding dark academia reads as well. Again, a lot of these books, well, not all, but a vast majority of these books are going to be books that I have not personally read, but it is someone else's favorite. So if you read it and you didn't like it, that's fine. Some of these choices were recommended more so than others, in which case I will mention this while I list the books. We have 33, I believe, books to go through, so as always I don't intend on going into a lot of information on each. So whether you're new to the genre or if you're looking for more dark academia recommendations within these 33 books, I hope that you can find something new. Unlike some other subgenres that we covered, I think this one is maybe a bit trickier because I've actually seen a lot of people have very different definitions of what counts as a dark academia book. I think what is somewhat universally agreed is that it has to have some dark themes. A lot of the time it is about an obsession or elitism or privilege of some sort, which plays quite a significant part in the story, hopefully in a way that is obviously not glamorizing it, but rather critiquing it. And of course the academia part would normally be surrounded towards either having a lot of research or the setting being in a university or a magic school or some type of educational aspect. Quite often involves a murder of some sort, and I think a lot of the time, instead of focusing on who has done it, we're focusing more on why it has occurred. There's a lot of fluidity, I think, in what people will consider as dark academia. I think that some of the books, and probably some of these books even, don't necessarily neatly fall into the category that ticks every box. I think sometimes dark academia is a vibe because it is a very strong aesthetic people enjoy, myself included. I actually suspect that I enjoy the aesthetic more than I enjoy dark academia books, but that is a whole different subject, and also still something to be like properly tested. All that to say that I anticipate a certain level of comments being like, this is not a dark academia book, I read this and it doesn't fit the category. Like, that's okay. I think because people recommended these, obviously some people do categorize it as a dark academia book, and we're just gonna have to agree that the definition of the genre is a little bit up to discussion, I guess. With all of that set aside, let's go through some books that you guys would recommend your fellow readers if they're looking for a great dark academia book. Because I'm not great at memorizing things in general, I will be reading from my notes. So if you see me looking down, just don't judge me. It would take me like 10 times longer to, try and memorize each line and then say it, so it's fine. So first of all, a very highly recommended, probably not the most recommended, but up there on the list is A Lesson in Vengeance. This is a YA queer mystery dark academia with a 3.57 average Goodreads rating. So I'm expecting some mixed reviews for this one, to be honest. Our main character, Felicity, comes back to Dalloway School to graduate after taking a break post her girlfriend's mysterious murder. She's trying to put it all behind, but history repeats itself and makes it impossible. The Cloisters, a book with a title that makes me very uncomfortable for some reason, I don't know. It's like the word moist, it's in the same lane. This one also has a little suspicious average rating of 3.45, but it is an adult mystery, and Anne is assigned to work at the Cloisters, a gothic museum and garden where a group of researchers look into the history of tarot and are convinced it holds the key to contemporary fortune telling. This was one of the ones that I was personally very interested once I read about it. The rating does make me a little suspicious, but it reminds me a little bit of the Hollow Places, and I really enjoyed the atmosphere there, but with more of a research and tarot spin, which sounds fantastic. I want to say this is the most recommended book on the list. If not, then it definitely is in like top 3 or 2. If We Were Villains. This is an adult mystery book with a 4.2 average rating, and we're there following a person's recall of this student group and this person was recently released from prison from the murder of one of the other students in this group. This is a theater study group, and it's very dramatic. There's a lot happening, and there's also nothing happening. I feel I have read this one. I enjoyed it, but I feel like I definitely didn't love it as much as everyone else seems to. But if you're going to start with anything, I feel like this is probably gonna be the one that most people would recommend, and most people do have a good success story with this. So I think a rating of 4.2 is extremely promising. That is very high. Following this is another book that is very beloved currently and has also been one of the most recommended ones on this list, and that is Babel, with a very, very strong average rating of 4.24. It's an adult historical fantasy. And it's about a world where magic is an art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation using silver bars. A Chinese boy enrolls in a translation university exploring themes of race and colonialism. And it's a pretty heavy and also a hefty read, but I have heard amazing things about it. A book about linguistics and meaning lost in translation really appeals to me as someone who obviously English is not the first language of. So I definitely intend on reading that. I'm just intimidated currently. Now, of course, this list had to include Secret History, because this is the book that pretty much everyone will probably associate with the beginning of dark academia as a trend, at least. The average rating for this is also very high, it's 4.18. Under the influence of their charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at an elite New England college discovers a way of thinking and living that is a world away from humdrum existence of their contemporaries. But when they go beyond the boundaries of normal morality, they slip gradually from obsession to corruption and betrayal, and at last into evil. I have, however, heard people say that this one is not necessarily the best one to start with, but there are hardcore fans of it out there that probably would disagree with the statement, so it's up to you. I have heard that the writing style in this is very, very pretentious, which obviously is categorization of dark academia as a genre, so it's not surprising, but something to keep in mind of. Alright, next up, another one super highly recommended one, especially within a YA fantasy category, and that is Legendborn. This is a King Arthur retelling. Our main character, Bree, witnesses a magical attack on her very first day on campus, a demon being hunted by the secret society, one of them trying and failing to wipe her memories of the night, which in turn unlocks Bree's magic and memories. Maybe her mother's death was no accident. So we also have this kind of murder solving aspect of it as well. So this one also comes very, very highly recommended. The next one has not appeared extremely frequently in the answers of, the top first pick. However, I do think it's a fairly new release and I have been seeing it everywhere, so that's something to keep in mind. It's called Ink Blood Sister Scribe. It's an adult magical realism. In this spellbinding debut novel, two estranged half-sisters tasked with guarding their family's library of magical books must work together to unravel a deadly secret at the heart of their collection, a tale of familial loyalty and betrayal and the pursuit of magic and power. This setup has been quite common in this list, I've noticed when I was writing this up, especially of the ones that I've not actually heard much of before. It seems to be like some sort of magic from a library or like archives being released, and then there's like a power struggle. It seems to be a very key story structure. If you're looking for an adult historical fiction, The Historian might be a good shout. It has the rating of 3.79. The main character finds a bunch of old letters in her father's library that lead her on a pursuit of truth and legends of Vlad the Impaler and Dracula. So we have a little vampiric touch. Then we have These Violet Delights, not to be confused with the other book that's very popular with the same name. This is an adult queer thriller. The description of it reminded me of The Wicker King a lot. I think that if you like that, you probably will like this. I've not read it, but it just gave me the same kind of energy, except that this one has the academia aspect as well. Paul and Julian meet at university and are instantly drawn towards each other. Coming from very different backgrounds, their pull soon becomes borderline obsessive, a novel of escalating dread and an excavation of the unsettling depths of human desire. So it gets very like possessive and messy very quickly. I'm actually very intrigued by that one. The Drowning Tree is a adult thriller with a rating of 3.8. It's focused more so on an art piece, a stained glass art piece to be precise, called Lady in the Window, I think, is being restored when we find out that the object of the art was maybe not the woman it was thought to be. But before this can be explored, someone who suggested this is found dead. If you like messy books with messy characters, look no further, but in my dreams I hold a knife. This is one of those examples where I think I see this a lot on dark academia lists. I would personally not count it as a dark academia, but that just comes to show you like how different the definition is to everyone, which is quite fun actually. 6 friends meet at a 10-year college reunion. Someone tries to sabotage them and bring up the seemingly solved Heather's murder. We then swap times and jump to and fro, present and the past, learning snippets of what happened from different perspectives. I like that I even have to read my own like summarization of books that I have read. This is just it's just in the best interest of everyone, because otherwise I will ramble on forever and this will not be short at all. Another one that was recommended a bunch of times is gonna also probably not surprise anyone. It is Ninth House. This has a average rating of 4.04. About Alex, who is different from other Yale's freshmen. For one, she does not come from money and she dropped out of school and went a drug dealing route. She's a sole survivor of multiple homicides, and whilst in the hospital, gets invited to take a spot at one of the most prestigious universities. Why her and why now? And then we have occult stuff. That happens. Another adult paranormal fantasy is A Discovery of Witches. It is set in Oxford. Young scholars calls up a bewitched alchemical manuscript in the course of her research. Being from a line of witches herself, but not wanting to have anything to do with sorcery, she sends the manuscript away. However, it's a little bit too late, as it has already set off a streak of events in the underworld, resulting in hordes of demons attacking the very library. Then we have a YA mystery. I have not read this, but from the description, I do have an arc of it. I don't know how. I don't really deal with arcs that often, but I do have it. To me, it sounds a little bit like Pretty Little Liars, and I'm very excited to read this at some point. It has a 4.2 rating, which is very high. Anonymous texter in a prestigious school starts pulling up dirt on a few students, airing their darkest secrets, and I feel like enough said on that one. I will not try and pronounce this because I will inevitably fail, but the next book has the rating of 4.18. It's a dark paranormal romance. I want to say it's probably the only romance book in this list. This is an enemies to lovers. Main character enrolls in a school with vengeance on their mind, only to be met by his mother's killer's son. They are forced to work together and set their differences aside for the time being. A YA paranormal book with an average rating of 3.62, The Devil Makes 3, is a story that also has another library setting, with Tess, who works there dealing with pretentious patrons and making a deal with one of them to find a grimoire. However, this then unleashes powers that sets all hell loose. Now they must work together to stop it. You can see where this slight template comes into play that I mentioned. Shadow in the Wind. It is a translated work, I'm pretty certain. Set in Barcelona, 1945, a city slowly heals from its war wounds, and Daniel, an antiquarian book dealer's son who mourns the loss of his mother, finds solace in a mysterious book entitled The Shadow of the Wind. But when he sets out to find the author's other works, he makes a shocking discovery. Someone has been systematically destroying every copy of every book they have written. In fact, Daniel may have the last book in existence. Soon, Daniel's seemingly innocent quest opens a door in one of the Barcelona's darkest secrets. This is an epic story of murder, madness, and doomed love. Yet another adult historical fiction. We have an instance of the Finger Post, 1660 Oxford. A fellow of New College is found dead in suspicious circumstances. A young woman is accused of his murder. We hear the story of the death from 4 witnesses: an Italian physician intent on claiming credit for the invention of blood transfusion, the son of an alleged royalist traitor, a master cryptographer who has worked for both Cromwell and the king, and a renowned Oxford antiquarian. Each tells his own version of what happened. only one reveals the extraordinary truth. Another YA fantasy is A Deadly Education, and it is set at Scholomance, a school for the magically gifted where failure means certain death, until one girl, Elle, begins to unlock its many secrets. Every move is strategic, nothing is what it seems. You either survive to graduate or you never leave. This actually, like now after reading Fourth Wing, this actually reminds me a little bit of that, so if you like those type of stakes, you might enjoy this as well. Then we get to, I think this next one is the only, maybe, dark academia book that I've read and I really, really enjoyed. And that is The Atlas 6. Somewhat surprisingly, it has an average rating of 3.65. I actually thought it would be higher, but the secret Alexandrian society recruits 6 new students who navigate their powers and each other, but are told that only 5 will continue, 1 will be eliminated. The spot in this society means the life of wealth and knowledge, and none are ready to let this opportunity slide. I think it's worth mentioning that the cast of characters is very interesting and very intriguing, and there's like some themes that I am very much known for liking, so just saying. A YA mystery called Truly Devious. Ellingham's Academy is a prestigious private school Stevie is about to start. There's a cold murder case that happened to the founder's family, which she is adamant to solve. This takes a backseat as her coursework overwhelms her. However, the case decides to rear its head from the past with a new murder, and solving this is top priority. From what I have heard, this seems to be a very, like a prolonged reward type of series. Like you don't necessarily get your itch scratched by the end of the first book, like this is the bigger commitment, but they don't seem to be like very long books, and I have heard that you fly through it, so just something to mention, though, I think. If you're looking to read a classic within the genre, apparently Picture of Dorian Gray is a recommendation. The rating is 4.12. I do remember reading this at school and actually enjoying it. A novel about a young man who sells his soul for eternal youth and beauty, discussing the importance of vanity in high society and contrast of behavior and appearance and arrogance galore. I do know there's adaptations of this as well, if you like reading books and then watching them being adapted. So there's that. Bunny, also a book that came up quite a bit in the recommendation list. However, the average rating is 3.54. I do know that there are a lot of people who will just simply not vibe with a lot of things in this book, so go in whilst being warned of that. It's about a new student who despises the weird vibes of the rest of the cohort, but quickly succumbs to their invitation and becomes part of their bunny society. Things get weirder and weirder. The synopsis was quite vague on this, I'm assuming because it's maybe like very easy to spoil or hard to describe. It could be either. Like from what I've heard from people who have read this book and online, it seems very culty. I do have this book, but I clearly have forgotten to bring it. But the next one is Vita Nostra. The story follows young Sasha, a high school graduate who's been planning to enter university and study linguistics until she is recruited by a strange, vaguely menacing man during a beach resort holiday and ordered instead to attend a mysterious college in the little-known province town known as Torpa. So another linguistics book. But if you enjoyed that theme in Babel, maybe this is the next book for you. This I also have, but I couldn't find it. It's gonna be somewhere. It's Never Let Me Go. I have actually watched the movie before I realized there's a book as well. It's a sci-fi dystopia and English boarding school students who are well taken care of and everything seems perfect, except there's a barrier between them and the rest of the world that is hitting away with a dark, grim purpose to it all. Really enjoyed the movie when I did see it. It was a while back, but I would highly recommend as well if you want to read and watch again. An adult mystery book called Gentlemen and Players, with the rating of 3.94. Set in the present day during Michaelmas term at St. Oswald's, a grammar school for boys somewhere in the north of England. The book is a psychological thriller about class distinctions, damaged childhood, secrets, identity, and revenge. Nice and sweet. Adult high fantasy with a whopping rating of 4.53 called Blood Over Bright Haven. Iona, an orphan, has climbed the ranks to become a high mage. With rivals as colleagues, she is set up with a janitor as a lab assistant rather than a student, but joke's on them because this is not his real identity. Pitched as fantasy for the fans of Schwab, which I think the cover very much relays as well. Next we have this beauty called Piranesi. It's a fairly short book as well, and it is adult magical realism with the rating of 4.23. And I feel like I'll probably read this one first, and this will set a whole precedent on what I think of them, so scared. We have The Will of the Many with a rating of 4.68. It's probably worth mentioning some of these books with very high ratings may have very few ratings in total compared to some other ones, but depends on how well the book is known. But still, I decided to mention it either way. The bit said, I tell them that I belong and they believe me, but the truth is that I have been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that may tear the Republic apart, and that I will never, ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. If you would rather try your luck with short stories than commit to the whole new genre especially, then you're in luck, because this just came out very recently. Sorry, I've not taken the plastic yet. In these hollowed halls, and it has a bunch of short stories from the following authors. So if you're in... Oh, there they are. There's more listed here. So this probably is a good shout if you're just not quite sure if that's the vibe, because you can sample the writing of many rather than committing to one long one. Okay, last three, we're getting there. If you want something haha hee hee, then there is this humorous thriller mystery, Murder Your Employer, The McMaster's Guide to Homicide. The McMaster is a conservatory for the applied arts, a luxurious college dedicated to the fine art of murder, where earnest students study how best to delete their most deserving victims. The next adult thriller has a rating of 3.97. It's called They Never Learn. They Never Learn is a dark and devious psychological thriller about a female professor who murders men who have committed unspeakable acts and abuse against women. Two women at Gorman University, one a student and the other professor, are united in bringing down the perpetrators of sexual assault. If you're looking for something very female rage-coded, this would be it. And then last, but hopefully not least, because I am reading this month, so fingers crossed, we have A Study in Drowning. This currently has 4.3 rating, and it's a YA fantasy book. Effie has been haunted by visions of the Fairy King since childhood. She's an aspiring architect who enters a competition to design an author's house. The authors of a book she has been carrying with her since forever, and it's like it's like basically like a comfort blanket for her. Must be fate. But then she also finds a scholar inside the house who's trying to show that the author was actually a fraud. If you have another book that you think should have been on the list but did not quite make it, please leave the recommendation down below. If you have read any of these and also really liked it, please also leave that down below. I want the comment section of this video to also just be an asset for people, as always, to find recommendations and reads within the genre. Let me know if you're a fan of dark academia or if it's not entirely for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!